Welcome back to the second part of Studio Ghibli Ranked. If you haven't seen the first part, then why'd you click on this? Go watch it. Go watch the first part. In my opinion, all of the movies we just talked about range from terrible and boring to good and entertaining. What distinguishes the 14 movies we're about to talk about is that they all offer something meaningful beyond just being engaging. I recommend these movies now, and if you haven't seen one of them, I urge you to skip on to the next one you have seen. So let's start the second half of this video with... Porco Rosso is my least favorite of Hayao Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli movies simply because I don't quite know how to feel about it. It flies a strange line between an adult and kids movie, never fully committing to either. On the one hand, there are sexual references and comments on the psychological brutality of war. On the other hand, there's scenes like this. I don't want to criticize it because of its difficult categorization. Maybe it's just an adult movie that has some fun action scenes, or a kids movie with adult subtext that'll whiff over the kids' heads. Either way, I wish Porco Rosso delved deeper into Marco's character, his survivor's guilt, and disconnect from humanity. What is most interesting in the film isn't explored very thoroughly. The strongest scene in the movie is when the planes ascend to heaven and Marco is begging to be taken with them. His loss of faith in humanity is the core of the movie, but sometimes feels like a sideshow to the Miyazaki set pieces, such as the manly brawl at the end or saving of the kids' swim team at the start, which, while fun, don't do anything to delve deeper into the concepts that make the film so interesting. As much as I love these action scenes, I wish Porco Rosso had the balls to commit to being an adult fairy tale, more like The Wind Rises or Princess Mononoke, and spend less time on fun shenanigans. Yes, get out of here, Porco Rosso. Scene by scene, this movie is a masterwork. Even just looking at individual frames throughout the film, it is clear that these are stunning pieces of artistry. Now, if these frames come to life, and a Joe Hisaishi score is put on top of them, it creates the ideal atmosphere to tell this timeless narrative. The tale of the Princess Kaguya is an adaptation of an ancient Japanese folktale, the tale of the bamboo cutter. When I learned its roots, my first thoughts were, that makes sense. The movie looks, feels, and acts like a folktale. It amplifies the legend in a very dingified way, while also not losing its connection to the human. Unfortunately, it's ultimately a little too repetitive and long in the later half of the film. Once again, my attention span is the enemy. It makes sense for the story to enhance the feeling of being trapped with her. It just doesn't flow as smoothly and entertain as much as I'd like. As beautiful as it all is, if a few scenes were cut, the movie would hit with the full soft and tragic punch that the animation deserves. Beyond the main character, all the other characters here are underdeveloped. Nothing past the cliched shell of what the character's role is supposed to be. That's fine though, because who cares about the characters when you've got this? And this. And this. The sound and music and picture work together really well to create the world that the characters inhabit. The focus being more on the world building than its individual characters makes sense, given the ecological story it's telling. But because so much runtime is spent on the world building, the film feels much bigger in scope, but much less personal. Miyazaki definitely does a better job at balancing the character and the world building in his later films to their narrative limits of quality, but overall my initial expectations were blown to bits. A much needed reminder of animation's potential to create the impossible. Castle in the Sky is the adventure that you always dream of going on when you're a kid. A mix of the cliché, fantastic adventure movie elements such as pirates, princesses, and even government agents in a classic call to adventure story. The combination of all these elements create a unique experience reminiscent of childhood imagination where the rules of the game aren't set. The character design and slapstick humor reminded me of Lupin III, The Castle of Cagliostro, Miyazaki's first feature film, and another fun watch. In the grand scheme of his filmography, the film feels transitionary, like a product of what came before and what was to come. It's our first glance into a lot of the ideas that Miyazaki explores with more complexity in his later films: airships, childhood, and egg-shaped creatures, while retaining the style of what came in his earlier work. And although his ideas are more bluntly expressed here than later, the film still paints such a distinctive and beautiful portrait of childhood adventure that turn in such wild, unexpected directions of unrestrained cartoon fun that you cannot help but be swept along with the characters. The Wind Rises has Miyazaki taking a turn from his usual fantasy film into a World War II biopic about an airplane engineer. That sounds boring to you, it did to me. But despite the departure from his usual fantasy subject matter, the film isn't an inkling less fantastic. It's a testament to the power of dreams, anchored in the painful realities of life. It isn't really an escape from life, but instead it takes life head on, never shying away from what reality confronts us with. It asks us how to face life's contradictions. How can we love something that won't last? How do we live with ourselves if what makes us most alive directly feeds what we most hate? By asking these difficult questions, Miyazaki takes us on a journey of adult self-discovery that, while very beautiful and thought-provoking, is probably his film that I'm least likely to rewatch. Whenever I think about Howl's Moving Castle, I think about its moments of operatic spectacle. Unexpected moments of pure movie magic that don't seem to want to leave my head. Chief among them is our introduction to Howl, as he escorts Sophie away from two annoying guards and literally sweeps her off her feet. Unfortunately, I can't pretend that a sequence like this is the whole movie, but a lot of it comes close. This movie is filled to the brim with spontaneous, magical moments. Every moment here is a new wonder, almost every second is fun. It's the breathing space in between that Miyazaki masters in the later films on this list that he doesn't have enough of here. I love a lot of this movie. I love how alive Howl's Castle feels. I love the classic Miyazaki cleaning montage. I love all the good values that Miyazaki preaches in his films. But most of all, I love the score. I want to melt into the music and the landscape and never come back. There's no Studio Ghibli movie quite like The Red Turtle. Actually, now that I think of it, there's no movie that I've seen that replicates what The Red Turtle does. By that, I mean that everything is stripped down. Like, they took the story beats of a lot of ancient myths, stories that are already distilled, and distilled that even more into the bare structure of this film. Then they built the unique animation and score around that structure to create the right atmosphere for each moment. It doesn't have conventionally subtle themes, but instead says what it's about in bold. It expresses a lot of things, each scene going through a very clear human emotion or life challenge. Bitterness, regret, acceptance. It's visual storytelling at its peak, foregoing a lot of the usual things like dialogue and complex characters to focus on what truly resonates. By the end of the film, I felt like I just watched something important. More than anything, it gave me perspective. The Red Turtle tells a story of human life. Right now, I'm at the cusp of being an adult, with responsibilities and scary stuff like that. So this film gave me comfort that since so many people have done this thing, life, before me, that I could do it too. With each film I put on that wasn't directed by the two Ghibli co-founders, I felt like I was playing Russian roulette. It could turn out to be something predictably dull, or something unexpectedly special. I hate to say it, but along with The Red Turtle, Whisper of the Heart is the only other chamber unoccupied by a bullet of either mediocrity or passive entertainment, breaking through my arbitrary threshold from a fun piece of entertainment to a piece of art I genuinely connected with. Whisper of the Heart is an honest representation of the artist's journey enveloped in a love story. Unlike so many other movies of its kind, it isn't about someone who has talent, then capitalizes on that innate special talent to montage their way to success. It is about someone who has talent and works hard and long hours to become better. Then, through her sacrifice, she does. It dispels the myth of quick success by showing us the long hours Shizuku spends in writing. The film is also a high school romance tale, but once again, it takes us in a different direction. Instead of being about two people who love each other because they are each charming and good looking, it's a love tale of reciprocity, of discovering yourself through the eyes of the person that loves you. A push towards self-actualization. Whisper of the Heart destroys the tropes of its combined genres in favor of honesty. Then, its core is wrapped in its own unique flavor unlike any Miyazaki or Takahata film. The intricately detailed city and interiors bustling full of life. I mean, just look at one of these. How much time was spent making this background? On top of that, there's its music that sets an atmosphere like no other Ghibli film. An animated kids movie about overcoming social insecurity, owning up to who you are, and the value of being a generous person. This goes on the list of films that I'm definitely going to show my future kids, if I have future kids. And I could say this about a lot of Ghibli movies, but the attention to detail is astounding. From the way the waves roll over, the behavior of the dog, to the distinctive nuances in human interaction, the crowds made up of real people, and a million other examples. It's these little things that make rewatching the film so enjoyable, heartwarming in the purest sense of the word. Ponyo once again captures a cinematic visualization of childhood imagination. It starts off calm, then explodes into a fluid coloring book of pastel colored in with singular vibrant colors. A universal expression of childhood, in the complete safety and coziness of your warm, glowing house during a storm late at night, in the pure excitement found in the buildup of a tasty meal, and complete devotion to keeping the goldfish you just found alive and yours. It then brings in these universal representations of reality with what was only in our heads, willing a boat to be bigger so that you could be captain and she could be the lookout, a sea of every sea creature, extinct or not, a little girl running on a wave of waterfish. Ponyo flip-flops between making me drown in childlike awe and excitement, wondrous discovery paired with gleeful joy. I understand the plot criticism, the movie being rushed in the last act, having underdeveloped characters, but to that I say, stop thinking so much, dude. Did you care about minute plot details when you were a kid? Well, Ponyo is a film from the world of children. So jump into the escapism, be a kid, and allow the film to wash over you.
論理でやっていくとさ、自分の考えで狭くなるから、それを意識的に壊してみようかなとかそういうことで、子供たちはね分かるんですよ。 論理できてないから。
Okay, this one really hit something in me. It taps into emotional wells that I would have otherwise forgotten about. You know when you're a kid and you watch a movie that just becomes your entire personality? It's what you're thinking about every minute of the day, when you're building Lego or brushing your teeth or doing any other things kids do. When I was a kid, for a period of time, The Lord of the Rings were those movies. And now, whenever I rewatch those movies, even though they're objectively great movies, I have no way of thinking about them impartially. They're just a part of who I am, coming across the scary, the mysterious, the beautiful, the adventure. Well, this woke up that little kid. My Neighbour Totoro is Miyazaki at his most soothing. It's a calming meditation on reality, with the fantastical not only there to propel you to impossible heights of escapism, but to enhance reality by forcing us to appreciate what we already see. It isn't the boisterous, over-the-top journey that our child selves would want to go on, like Castle in the Sky, but instead it's the childhood adventure we did go on, and still can. To watch My Neighbour Totoro is to see through the eyes of a kid again. We see Mei and we see a 2-year-old, stumbling and exploring, opening a flower shop with her dad, then in almost the same breath, falling in the other direction on the belly of a giant creature in the woods, to then poke it on the nose, waking its hibernation as if it were her dad. As I said with Kiki's delivery service, Miyazaki isn't only observant and detail-oriented in the environment, but human behavior too. It's almost as if these are the minds of real people in the skin of animated characters, not overemphasized and predisposed to singular motivations and set-in-stone character traits like, for example, a Pixar character, but evolving, sometimes contradictory. We explore, then experience this movie just as we do real life. There's no overarching hero's journey template, only freedom and unpredictability. Miyazaki's playing a high-stakes, high-reward game, and I can't begin to describe how much it paid off. It's rare that a movie rearranges your perception of reality. Not only changes your point of view on a subject, but makes you feel that point of view. If I listed off a fact like, during the bombing of Kobe, Japan in 1945, 8,841 residents were killed in the firestorms. The fact is undeniably tragic, but I'll forget it 5 seconds after hearing it. Now if I sat down and watched a story that zeroes in on the fictional lives of only 2 children who are affected by those bombings, now I can't forget. I think that to feel something told in a story is the best way of really learning. I don't mean to sound pretentious, but this really is the power of cinema. By directly confronting me with the lives of those who weren't so lucky, Grave of the Fireflies made me realize, emotionally, just how fucking lucky I am. This was initially shown as a double feature with My Neighbour Totoro. It completely blows my mind that these 2 movies, both about childhood, both of such outstanding quality with complementary themes and completely different tones, were in the same double feature. I don't mean to over-dramatize, but that's gotta be one of the best deals ever. 2 movies for the price of 1, and they're 2 of the greatest animated films of all time. This is actually the first Ghibli movie that I saw. I started watching them because I wanted to watch Spirited Away. And then I watched Spirited Away, and I was like, shit, I need to watch all the other ones. So I watched every single other one, and then I came back to Spirited Away once I was done so I could show it to my brother. And now I've written a few different drafts for this, but I could never really articulate what makes it what it is. I could talk about how it's imaginative, how it's one of the most creative and inventive movies ever. I could talk about the feeling that it gives me when I'm done. I think that all great movies leave you at the end with this unique feeling to the film itself. It created this meditative feeling that all in life is okay. Everything's gonna be fine, you know? There's good people, there's good art, that life can go to shit, but there's always gonna be Spirited Away. It just left me in awe. Like I didn't know any of this was possible, that something like this had been done. I don't want to build it up to be this grand, beautiful, urethral experience that transcends reality or anything like that, because I think that discounts how understated the movie is, and may convince you not to watch this movie quite yet because you're not in the right mood for a masterpiece. But I don't think that this is a movie that should be built up with high expectations like it's The Godfather, like it's this big, menacing epic. You know, it's the movie you need to see before you die. I want to say, go watch it and expect nothing from it. Just watch it. You don't need to have anything in your head before you press play. Well, I don't have much more to say. I don't think I need to say much more other than go watch Spirited Away. And go watch every other movie you want to see in the Studio Ghibli library. Before I go, I just want to say that there are a lot of very beautiful, well-crafted videos, like video essays or reviews, stuff like that, about Studio Ghibli. And I linked my favorites in the description, so I encourage you to check those out. Thank you for sticking through this ridiculously long video. And goodbye.